I'm Donald Thibeau. I'm the Director of Product Management at Hedera Hashgraph, and I'm very excited to be here at REIMAGINE 2021.
All right, hello, and welcome to REIMAGINE 2021. This is our 7th conference in a monthly series of events, bringing you nothing but the best projects, bright minds, and leaders in the space. We've been fortunate enough to invite many talented individuals and teams to come speak with us, providing updates, insights, and all the above that's happening in crypto. I'll be your host today, Adam from the MouseBelt team based here in San Francisco, where we focus on early stage investments through our accelerator. We provide development support to a number of growing projects in the space, as well as education within the MouseBelt University program. Our main objective and goals are pretty simple. It's increasing adoption, use cases, real-world applications. So we're here kind of throwing this conference to we seek to educate our audience on blockchain by helping them understand crypto's real impact. Again, thank you all for tuning in to the conference here. We have an exciting interview for you today. First time for me. I think this is the first time for my guests to join. We're a big supporter of Hedera, which the company, I'll do an introduction real quick, but they've been part of our conference pretty much every month. So without further ado, before I butcher this, I have Donald Thibeau, Director of Product Management from Hedera. How you doing, Donald? Nice to have you today.
I'm doing very well, Adam. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited for the conversation.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm glad you're able to participate. I know everybody's stuck at home, so we've decided to do this video thing, this video content interviews, and so far it's been really successful, which kind of just highlights the demand, right, for education, for blockchain, for crypto in general. Obviously Hedera is a hash graph, another form of kind of this emerging technology, which maybe you can dive into a little bit. So we've had your support now. You've been a partner of ours for, I don't know, a couple of years. And anyways, it's going to kick this thing off. So tell me about your journey, Donald. I've never met you before, but I've worked with your team. I don't know your experience. There's a lot of people right now that are rookies, that are experienced, that are novice. But it's always good to hear how everybody went down the rabbit hole. So yeah, if you can give us a little backdrop of yourself.
Sure. So I started my journey down the rabbit hole back in 2014, back when I was actually still at university at the College of William and Mary. So for me, I was studying finance and economics, but working in cybersecurity with KPMG. And for me, blockchain was really the intersection of those two passions of mine, right? How do you manage and change financial models with this new and innovative technology? So right after school, I went straight to IBM, primarily because they were building such a strong investment in the blockchain and DLT space, and spent a little over 2 years there before joining my team here at Hedera Hashgraph to help launch our public cryptocurrency network.
So, oh man, so many questions there because IBM is kind of kicked in really early. Hedera's been around quite a long time. What was it that fascinated you about kind of this space? Because two things. One, Hedera is actually not a blockchain, so we can touch on that in a little bit. Two, IBM is like an early, industry leader in kind of in this technology. What excited you during that period of time with IBM in the space?
I think what was so enticing is that we saw industries from across the globe, whether it was banks in East Asia, supply chain companies in North America, or insurance companies in Europe, all looking at distributed ledger technology as a way to start changing trust models in business. And if you think about that concept of a trust model, it sounds like a bit of a buzzword, right? But it's really about changing how you actually communicate with yourself, your company, your employees, but also your partners. And DLT, really opens up the aperture for greater collaboration. So for me, again, back to my days as an econ major, thinking about efficient markets, that openness is fascinating in terms of what it can do for these new marketplaces. And that's certainly something that's kind of core to us at Hedera now. How do we enable market formation and openness to accelerate adoption of this technology?
And what were some of those discussions? Because even to this day, I mean, you guys are super advanced, evolved, and we'll talk about some of the services you're providing, listening to the market, developers, the DLT, industry as a whole. But what were some of those discussions? Because you bring up important, critical, ideas here and concepts where it
Mhm.
is like a new business model. So
Right.
the existing Web 2.0, the legacy systems, and now Web 3.0, along with this transparent and open architecture design, like they don't
Mhm.
really mesh well with kind of the the way we are doing business and the way we're going to do business. How did you manage those discussions? And was the demand from like the enterprises themselves like, oh, let's do this? Or are they still, were they hesitant like this, this is going to kill my business model or whatever? You got to
Yeah.
really think differently.
Over the years I've been working in the space, it's obviously a journey. People first started learning and now they're more active in building. But one of, our primary motivators is that whether it's an individual developer building a DApp or whether it's an enterprise integrating their ERP system, ultimately they're going to touch DLT through endpoints, right? Through different APIs that provide that core value of decentralization in decentralized communication, autonomous smart contracts, or native token issuance in an accessible way. So for us, we try and help both, again, small developers and big organizations realize that DLT doesn't have to be this massive, confusing technology to embrace, but something that can plug into an existing application, an existing ERP stack, and even in doing that, start to show the really disruptive potential that this new trust model can provide. So for us, it's about making it accessible, making it easy to use, and making it integrated in the tools and capabilities that people are building with today.
And so let's kind of transfer, good segue from kind of IBM corporate leader, tech leader, and then now this new wave of other projects coming out, especially
Mhm.
Hedera Hashgraph. One, can you tell us a little bit real quick, in your own words, like the difference between blockchain that everybody else kind of sees it from the hyperledgers and Bitcoins and Ethereums to what
Mhm.
Hedera is offering, which is a little different.
So we kind of group both of those in the context of distributed ledger technology, right? And what that means is you can have verifiable records of an event, right? A supply chain being transferred, a token being issued, or even a message being sent from one party to another. The blockchain architecture takes that distributed ledger and creates it as literally a block of individual transactions or batch transactions on that ledger. But in doing so, it incurs some trade-offs from both a performance and security perspective regarding the use of, proof of work or leader-based proof of stake algorithms to continue appending items to that blockchain. For Hedera, we wanted to break that assumption and come up with the solution to that common trilemma around decentralization and performance, as well as security, and provide a model which could be performant at the scale of thousands of transactions per second and truly decentralized in its consensus process. So Hashgraph is a DAG, or directed acyclic graph, as it's used in the term, or in the market. And it's a different data structure that essentially allows nodes in the network to more efficiently come to consensus on the order of events. So rather than needing to wait for everybody to create the right block, a leader to be selected, and that block to be appended, the Hashgraph delivers that same distributed ledger promise with more efficiency, as well as
That's
more
great.
decentralized security.
Totally. And like when did you decide I'm gonna go work, for you call it like a public ledger, right? Kind of one of these up and coming startups. So when was it when you're like, hey, I'm getting a little taste, there's demand here, let me start exploring, and then you ended
Mm.
up with Hedera. Like what was going on during that period of time for you to say like, there's a future here and let me go explore.
So what I learned in my time at IBM is that across the globe, there was interest and need for larger organizations and consumer scale applications to start leveraging DLT. Even before, Elon talked about buying Bitcoin, there was real enterprise interest in using these public cryptocurrency networks. But what they needed in that was both accessibility of this technology through those integrations to technology they use today, and mature governance for the networks they're built on. And that's really what inspired me about Hedera, is that it was focused on combining those two promises: a decentralized and scalable protocol with a mature compliance and governance body that helps oversee the creation and growth of that protocol. And that's the Hedera Governing Council. So when I saw what Hedera was pitching, and when I first started talking to the team, that value, became clear to me, and that's why I was so excited to join.
Now, last question on kind of your previous employer, which I won't bring up any names, but
Sure thing.
it's interesting because I feel like, at one point it was the IBM's kind of maybe Oracle's, maybe Cisco, right? They have their technologies all similar, but the demand was on the public side, kind of what you're referencing to. So before we get, completely move on to Hedera and like what you guys are working on, like, do you see some of these other traditional players having a big impact moving forward, or are people innovating into Hedera Hashgraph now and maybe a select few others? But overall, you would think like, oh, IBM, like let's just all flock there, but that's not the case.
So I would say that there was demand absolutely on both sides, the pure public and the pure private, but the latter was far more secretive, if you will. Or, they were starting with proof of concepts and demos versus being in the public from day one. So I think there was demand, but it just wasn't always as equally surfaced, as you will. But to the credit of many of those organizations that you outlined, they were very active in investing in technology, in resource and education of many of the organizations which we're now seeing enter the space today. They're still building their products. I think they're going to be very successful in certain use cases and areas. And ultimately, we're seeing them consolidate towards public networks. So IBM's participation on our governing council is a good point of evidence for that. So it's nice to see that they're kind of moving to embrace these public networks as well.
Yeah, great. And what's the relationship there since they are on? Well, maybe you could quickly talk about the governing council. These are the members, the decentralization part of it, that kind of manage the whole ecosystem, as you will. Maybe you want to touch on that.
Sure. So they're I would say a core part of a much broader decentralized ecosystem. But Hedera as an organization is actually a multi-member LLC. And what that means is we're not controlled by a single stakeholder, but this group of our essentially corporate board of directors, which we call the Hedera Governing Council. So these organizations help us make both strategic and tactical decisions about how to build and grow our network and ecosystem. So they help us approve the product roadmap or drive new features and pricing decisions. And our goal is that group is going to be as diverse and representative as possible from different industries, geographies, and areas. So council members today include IBM, Google, two of the world's largest law firms, DLA Pipers and Dentons. Just recently this week, we announced Standard Bank, who was our first node in Africa, which we're very excited about. And even organizations beyond that, the list is ever growing. So we see our council members as core partners for us and helping to grow and build this decentralized technology.
And I think that hits it home in terms of the ecosystem in general, like this co-opetition, right? This kind of working together to achieve, the objectives and goals and mission that kind of this scene has. So it's interesting, the council members. So are you assuming, I guess, like what's the benefit to them, and I guess to the council members, and then also to Hedera in terms of some are, the one was not a competitor, but kind of doing the same thing. What kind of fruition, what's the expectation to bring it into, entities like that kind of have similar tech or are working on some projects, maybe interoperability, right? Maybe some standards amongst the two, or, the various teams that are involved. But how do you see kind of that landscape when Hedera is doing one thing, you have some other council members that may be doing similar things or whatnot?
Yeah, so I break the council members down into really three roles. It's governors, operators, and solution builders. And they get value from each, right? As governors, they help lead the growth of this new emerging public network, which for them is incredibly valuable from an innovation and learning perspective. They also operate the nodes on our network, which is incentive delivering for them as well. And they are, in some cases, also solution builders. So they might have a securitization platform like DLA Piper with Toco, or they could be building an integration into their existing product suite that really helps them realize the value from DLT. And from our perspective, we think it's great to get the insight of these tremendously large organizations who are heavily invested across industries, across technologies, in how we can grow and scale our technology.
Great. And I want to tap into like 2020 now, because obviously the governing council has had some input and insight, and things, these votes go down in general, but touch on a couple services here, and I'll let you kind of break it down. Right, we have entrepreneurs right now, we have students tuning into this conference, we have startups, we have enterprises kind of across the board, and I feel like Hedera listens to the market, right? At one point, like decentralized storage was on the table, smart contracts, right, kind of within the ecosystem. And you can feel free to touch on those too if it leads into it, but two things I want to touch on: one, Hedera Consensus as a service, and then Hedera Token Service. I feel like, again, the market, the pace of innovation happens so quick, so fast. There's DeFi, there's this chain, that chain, and I feel that you guys have taken it all in and really put out something for the developers, for enterprises that can really, like you said earlier in the discussion, like plug and play some APIs, right, and kind of make this seamless as the evolution continues. So let's talk about like Hedera Consensus as a service, and then Hedera Token Service, and I'll let you kind of break those out.
For sure. So those were two of our big focuses of last year, and we were really excited to that point around the pace of innovation to have two brand new services on the mainnet in a relatively short period of time. We were very happy with. And they're designed so that developers in different use cases can use the mainnet for that purpose. So the consensus service really provides a verifiable, auditable log of messages for any application. You could build a text message app, or you could connect it to ordering for a private distributed ledger network, or you could connect it to a centralized database and have verifiable proofs of all of the data in your application. And it's that premise of, can you embrace public auditability and verification of your data to enhance the trust an organization or person might have in that data? So Everywhere, for instance, is logging IoT data for vaccine distribution in the National Health Service for COVID-19, a critical part of the vaccine infrastructure. And now it's verifiable so that people can see what temperature data was stored or vaccines were stored at one point in time. So that first service really is focused around decentralized messaging and auditability. What we added with the second service was the ability to natively issue an asset, which could represent something like a governance token, a non-fungible digital collectible, or a sovereign currency or a stablecoin. And that token can not only be held by any developer or any Hedera account, but it can be easily transferred with speed and with a cheap price, and can be easily atomically swapped with any other token type. So even if we just look at those two services, what we now have here is a distributed messaging system and a distributed issuance and settlement layer. And those core building blocks can enable an incredible amount of use cases for different organizations, developers, startups, and even academics.
The consensus service as a service is would you consider that is that like a layer 2? Like, what kind of like application is that in terms of Hedera? Hedera being the base layer, is this considered a second layer, or where does this fall?
So the service is layer 1. It's an API that Hedera provides, but how it can be used is actually great for layer 2s. So it could be used by a centralized application or a layer 2 network. And what we like about HCS, which is a bit different than, say, a Polkadot architecture, is it enables the same formation of layer 2s over a core layer 1, but does it in what I call a less opinionated way. So if you want to use Fabric, you could build your layer 2 with that. If you want to use Corda, if you want to use the Geth version of Ethereum, if you want to use Tendermint, it really is flexible for whichever layer 2 protocol they want to use, all connected to fast, fair, and secure ordering from the consensus service.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And I think these are critical components to interoperability, functionality, composability, which means,
Absolutely.
like you said, yeah, putting apps and dApps together and this new wave of Web 3.0 functioning um, in a way where developers can come in and start getting creative and not worry about things, right? Get creative, apply it,
Mm-hmm.
test it, experiment, and that's how we come up with innovation. So, yeah, I think you guys had a hackathon at the beginning of summer, and we participated that for this Hedera consensus service, and there were so many great projects, right?
Yeah.
That were leveraging this solution.
It was amazing. And frankly, one of the things we were most excited about with our token service launch is that we actually launched with an ecosystem. I think it was over 60 token issuers, wallet providers, exchange providers, custody providers, all supporting tokens on HTS. And the hackathon projects all took that a step above, right? Making new models for tokenization, building new features and capabilities that even we didn't think of. So we loved seeing some of the work from that.
Yeah, and what are you seeing? So whether it's on the enterprise side, maybe we'll start on the enterprise side, or where are
Mhm.
most of your discussions on the enterprise? Or are you kind of all over?
I'm all over.
Yeah,
The team focuses, and I help wherever I can. So happy to talk about both sides, and dive in wherever you're interested.
yeah. Let's do both, because when you think of it, Ethereum, you think of like you think of the typical like smart contracts, DeFi,
Hmm.
scaling issues, though, performance issues in certain verticals, certain industries. You hear of these other next generation chains coming out that are trying to solve that, but
Mm.
enterprise is I don't know, it was the talk. I feel like you guys have stayed the course, stay focused on providing like you know uh high throughput performance, like technology. So let's start on the
Mhm.
enterprise side. Like what are you seeing on that front in terms of use cases, applications, and anything surprising you?
Yeah. So first of all, the beauty is that these two sides are absolutely consolidating. What I'd say first is we're seeing an incredible amount of interest around stable coins for payments. The
Wow.
OCC indicated that that might be something accessible for financial institutions to do. And that's really kicked off a strong amount of interest for enterprises to leverage it for payment solutions. We also have started to see a lot of applications of DeFi start to be applied to things like non-fungible tokens and supply chains. So Suku, who's a great partner of ours, is focused on some of those challenges in specific areas and supply chains and building some of these marketplaces. And then from some of the developer and more independent side, we're seeing everything from DeFi lending protocols to non-fungible digital collectibles, as well as things like social tokens. So one of the areas we think is really going to be interesting is people monetizing themselves, their contracts, but also social platforms to facilitate greater engagement.
Nice. And one of the challenges when you talk about, I mean, you guys have been around a long time, so you already have the community, the
Mhm.
growth, like the momentum, the robust network, and all that. How do you make
Mhm.
it easier? When other chains come up, it's very difficult to like gather that community driven, like get developers from a tooling perspective, infrastructure stuff. How have you handled a lot of those items? And you're providing services, right? So that's kind of
Mhm.
included to allow the growth and creativity of this space. What's the strategy behind that? How have you guys been so successful in
Mhm.
attracting developers?
Yeah, so one of our core tenets from the get-go was to build SDKs and technology which was accessible by existing developers and existing platforms. So we've got Java, JavaScript, Golang, community SDKs in things like Rust and .NET, so that whichever language a developer might be familiar with, they can start building today. But then specifically on our Hedera token service, one of the things we did is actually remove the need for a smart contract to issue a token. So now a developer doesn't need to learn how to write, audit, and trust a smart contract that represents, say, a basic fungible token, but they can simply create it through one of those accessible APIs with the Hedera token service, and the entity gets created natively on the mainnet. that brings benefits from performance, accessibility perspective, but also certainly from a security perspective, because there's no need for that smart contract, which, as we keep seeing with certain projects, can lead to challenges.
Definitely. And do you guys, I feel like I don't notice too much marketing in terms of like DeFi or NFT or whatever. I feel like it's just organic growth. People understand like what they're working with. You have, laid out this platform, this network that people can tap into and are familiar with, like you said, the SDKs, the APIs.
Mhm.
You don't really hear too much about that. And I know overall, maybe people think, or maybe because I'm in this bubble, that Hedera's enterprise, right, focus. But
Mhm.
like you said, there's teams porting over to start developing on Hedera moving forward. So like, what would you say, I guess, the growth is going to come from on either side, like the DeFi market, the NFT market, and what's your strategy to increase, the apps developed?
Yeah. So, I think we've seen an incredible amount of organic growth. But one of the things we really like to pride ourselves on is being successful and showing our success through application builders,
Yeah.
talking about the Everywheres or the Sugus or the DLA Pipers of the world, to show what they're doing to, promote them, but also inspire others who might want to build things similarly. So we think that growth is going to continue, where they bring in, for DLA Piper, new token issuers, who, whether they're securities or new asset classes, as well as continue to beat the drum on accessibility from a developer perspective.
Yeah, no, makes total sense. I mean, we've worked with your team in a variety of ways, and one of the things that I'm surprised about is just the longevity too of the team, right? That's been around a while, and the quickness of the council members, like the big names to sign on. Where do you see a lot of activity on within the Hedera network? Maybe geographically, like, is it the US where you see a lot of development? Is it Europe? Other continents? And how do you see those areas?
Look, our primary motivation is decentralization. So we want representation from as many regions, as many industries as possible. We even joke about, when can we get our node on Antarctica, for instance, because we want it one on every continent. But really, you're seeing organic growth in non-fungible tokens, both in the US and Asia. We're seeing interest in some of these lending and DeFi protocols out of Europe. But it's really one of the things that's so compelling about this industry, that innovation is global and product is global. So you're seeing whatever does get built immediately be addressing this global cryptocurrency market, which is one of the most fascinating dynamics, I think, about the space.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the expansion, everybody's understanding, and we might have some students right now thinking about what they're going to build next, how to get involved. Do you have programs around Bounties, Hedera WIshlist in general, of like what to build, and kind of direct, so some of our viewers here to start developing on Hedera?
Absolutely. So we've got getting started documentation, but we've also have programs like our Boost program to help incentivize getting started quickly with all the things you'd need to build your app and start testing it on Hedera. And we're working to build a growing list, both of our Hedera improvement proposals and other ideas about software that could be contributed to or built on the network. And our goal is all of that will be decentralized from a management perspective, with reviewers and GitHub, as well as from a contribution perspective. So if you're looking to start a project, we'd love to talk with you and see how we can help out.
Great. So we got a few minutes here, but we just talked about 2020 and kind of the product market fit, that I would say that you guys were listening, develop some things, gauging interest, and that's kind of the requirements that I guess you felt during that period of time. So now we're in 2021. The pandemic, took a toll, accelerated, right? Innovation, accelerated, creativity. And here we are in 2021. What's on the agenda, I guess, moving forward, for the next year, next couple years? What do you guys, where's the evolution? Because we just talked about you guys onboarding enterprises. We're talking about the influx of DeFi, NFTs coming onto Hedera, more applications, programs to like, bring in startups and entrepreneurs. What do you guys have lined up for the next year, few years that you see either expansion, innovation, or at least hope to see?
So it's a bit of a cop out, I'll admit, but the innovation I'm most excited about is the innovation that's not even at Hedera. Our community is where we'll see new services, new applications, new ideas emerge, and be contributed back to our core protocol. So it's the work that we're seeing the enterprise space do around embracing cryptocurrencies and embracing these layer 2 networks, like you said, as well as in the developer communities, people who might have just started fundraising off of their Hedera hackathon project. And it's that innovation that I think is really going to continue to drive, for the next year and far beyond that, because, our goal is the ecosystem successful. We're here to build just the infrastructure as a community. So that's where we're focused. We'll keep adding new transaction types, taking in community contributions, soliciting, ideas from the community for what should get built and prioritized. And some of that stuff's going to be really cool to help you build new marketplaces, new applications in a distributed way.
And going back to the enterprise side,
Mhm.
There was, as you mentioned, interest, people, entities, and corporations were diving into it, leveraging the technology. And then there's everybody else that, maybe not ready. Where are we at, like, in terms of this business model to shift? Because it, like we mentioned at the beginning, it's a different mindset. I've had this discussion on the healthcare side. Like, there's so many, I've noticed all these applications, like great healthcare applications in blockchain. We'll just stick with blockchain. But I don't see them like taking off. And, I understood that it's the traditional legacy systems that are holding like a lot of those, the new wave of tech, because transparency, accountability, immutability, like the way our insurance works. So where do you see kind of like the growth in terms of maybe existing entities leveraging the tech, or the growth of just new entities, being born into kind of this new world?
I think on the enterprise side, it's back to payments and it's back to asset issuance. So issuing new securities, for instance, as a token, or issuing different assets on their balance sheet as tokens to build those revenue streams, build that justification for investing more. And they're being enabled by some of the startups and smaller companies in our ecosystem. We love when we can, matchmake, right? Give a startup an opportunity to pitch a council member or work with a council member to scale out their plans. So I think those are probably the industries or the use cases it would focus on. But there's even, I think, coming down the pipe, whether it's in environmental credits, whether it's in, this new term of CFI, which is like things coming full circle from DeFi. But we're here to be supportive of as much of it as we can and drive that success through our community.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, it's just interesting, right? There's people dabbling, they're not sure, but they are, building, they are testing the waters. And to kind of come full circle here with crypto hitting mainstream, is that pretty good? Or, with the Elons of the world and the micro strategies, like, how does that benefit? They're two different things. One, so, Bitcoin is, this application leveraging blockchain, and then we're talking about like use cases and like architecture and design on streamlining processes, whether that's cost savings, whether that's efficiency, on the back end of these things. But yeah, how do you perceive like the crypto in the news, and does the price have an effect on everything else?
Look, the beauty of the distributed, crypto industry is that the rising tide does really lift all boats. And I think all of us in the industry are excited to see more people come to this community, whatever asset, whatever token they're interested in. We at Hedera, we're here to build a 100-year company, 1,000-year network. And that's the way we think about it. So, stuff goes on in the market, so be it. We're here to build for the long term.
Nice, nice. So I think we've been on for quite some time here, Donald, and I appreciate you like joining us. As always, it's been a pleasure to have Hedera, support us, and we support you guys fully. Where can people find you, if they wanted to reach out or get more information?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, Don_Thibeau, or Donald@Hedera.com. Or if you post in your Discord, our Discord, I'll find my way there. So always happy to chat with anybody who's building and hearing about your ideas.
Great, great. So I think that concludes our discussion today. I'm Adam with the MouseBelt team here at REIMAGINE 2021. We just interviewed Donald Thibeau, Director of Product Management at Hedera. Great discussion. We just chatted about the products and services that Hedera launched last year, kind of where their future is going. We talked about their general Hedera Council that facilitates a lot of the inner workings and operations of the ecosystem as a whole. And then if you're thinking about Hedera on the enterprise front, great selection. But not only that, based off of this discussion, NFTs, DeFi, various verticals, applications, it suits everybody. So again, go to Hedera and check them out. And thank you for tuning in to REIMAGINE 2021. Hopefully you enjoyed your time, and we'll talk again. Thanks, Donald, for joining.
Thanks so much, Adam. Thanks, everybody.